So again, as Autumn said, my name is Max Green. I work with the U.S. Senate, and today I'm going to be talking to you about insights-driven business, and hopefully you'll have a few takeaways for your organizations to take back after this presentation. Okay, apologies here. The echo is getting me off a little bit. So this is a little bit about me. As Autumn mentioned, I have a very interdisciplinary background, and I'd like to say that the core of this presentation is about building cross-functional organizations, integrating data analytics in every step of your organization's processes and workflows. This will range from customer experience to employee experience to leveraging AI and hopefully bringing you into the future of data. So, the next 10 years of tech innovation, in my opinion, are going to be dictated by organizations' ability to adapt to low and no-code development. I'm sorry, that delay is really throwing me off. As well as insights-driven business. So low and no-code development is the rise of Appian, Oracle, ServiceNow, and these other tools that are going to allow end users, business analysts to develop applications that help automate their workflows. Insights-driven business is directly linked to this. It's really important that organizations have log data, have customer data, and these other tools that they need to make the right decisions and automate in the right ways. So just as Excel and PowerPoint acumen were once reasons to hire employees and now they're no longer worthy of being on your resume, so too will low-code and no-code development as well as insights-driven and data analytics experience. So, this is just some basic insights on the data analytics field right now. It's something that a lot of you know. The Department of Labor projects that there's going to be a 36% increase in growth in the data analytics field over the next 10 years. One win for that, for potential people that are entering into the data analytics field, is, of course, high-paying salaries. But this is also, for employers, a huge area of concern. How can we both navigate to this data analytics future while also ensuring that we can make strategic investments that aren't going to bankrupt us, so to speak? And hopefully, you'll see through this presentation that employers have a variety of ways to encourage data analytics, essentially from, like I said, the bottom to the top, through certifications, through democratization of data, and these other tools that aren't as expensive to implement. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more during this presentation. Much better now. Okay, so even though data analytics are the drivers of the future, we've seen historic underinvestment and lack of return on actual data strategies within corporations. So to that point, the Institute of Management Accountants recently surveyed 170 organizations globally and found that more than 50% of respondents strongly agreed that their approach and use of data had to be massaged due to organizational weaknesses in people, data, or tools. Moreover, only less than 50% felt that organizations had the proper culture to implement state-of-the-art analytic tools, the appropriate tools to flexibly and quickly support data analytics operations, and the necessary data sources they needed to actually see results in their business. And further, only slightly more than 50% of respondents felt that they had the right data to support managerial decision-making and So what can you do to fix that? Well, first, invest. And here's a Bain sorry about that. Here is a Bain survey. They surveyed 334 executives and found that approximately 70% of organizations are investing heavily in data analytics, and nearly half of those surveyed expect a significant or transformational return on their investment. And what do those returns look like? Well, they look like this. According to a recent McKinsey & Company report, looking at a number of key performance indicators, companies implementing data and analytics effectively are seeing staggering returns compared to their non-data forward organizations. That's to say, organizations that have been able to implement the platforms, people, and tools that their organizations need to succeed in data are seeing around a 24% increase in return on investment versus non-data forward organizations who are seeing about a 3% return on their investment. Some of those ROIs are really staggering. There's a 7.4 increase in sales to existing customers, and that's something I really want to focus on here too. One of the key ways that your organization can leverage data is to identify devotees. As political discourse and social commentary become even more divisive, companies are often faced with this question of how do we speak to our customers, not alienate customers, and build our customer base? Well, I'll tell you that a lot of the leading organizations, businesses like Patagonia, Cotopaxi, and others have embraced an example of very environmental forward, socially justice-driven initiatives. And not only do those align with their brand and strategy, but they also align with the data that they're seeing. They're seeing that when they push these campaigns and they focus on those customers that they know are already aligned with their corporate beliefs, they're seeing significant more investment and purchases of their products. Some of those other financial ROIs are nearly 20x increase in customer profitability, to the point of devotees, a 5x increase in value delivered to customers, a 21x increase in migration to profitable segments. But again, all of you here know about these KPIs and you believe in the power of data. So what I want to focus on instead is how you can navigate data and ensure that you go from a simply data-aware or data-driven organization to an insights-driven organization. So what is insights-driven business? Insights-driven business, and this is a term I'm borrowing from Forrester, who's done a lot of leading research in this field, is the ability of an organization to harness and apply data and analytics at every opportunity to differentiate its products and customer experiences. And insights more broadly are gained by analyzing the data that they already have. IDBs also embody a number of future fit drivers. First, they exhibit creativity by innovating faster. Using closed-looped continuous learning processes, insight-driven businesses can discover better ways of advertising, of marketing, and refining their products and services to better than the rest. Further, they align those data and analytic techniques to reimagine the entire solution and its connected value proposition and disrupt that user experience to something new. They create and deliver new experiences, products, and services that would not be possible without their advanced data-driven insights. They also constantly adapt and grow faster, and that's something that so many of us have seen in the pandemic. And it goes to this next point as well, showing resilience in the face of change. How many of you are familiar with Vistaprint, the company that prints all kinds of things? Okay, a few people. Well, Vistaprint did something really impressive. They used the tools and supply chain that they already had to see that masks were trending as a search term on Google, among other tools that they used from an analytics perspective, in April of 2020. So they already knew that masks were going to be something that they had to capitalize on. Within a month of making that decision to invest in custom mask printing, they were able to stand up an entire supply chain and start delivering those products directly to consumers. Likewise, on the other end of that, as the pandemic wind down a few months ago, they also pulled out of that market. And that's just one of those ways that corporations or businesses of any size can really adapt agilely and nimbly. And the other key point I want to focus on there is they were using tools that they already had. So a lot of organizations, when they look to innovation, whether it be in terms of data or new segments that they can explore within their business, will often look for something that they don't have. What I want to drive home today is your organization already collects a ton of data. You have a ton of resources at your hands, and I want you to be sure that you can leverage those tools in the future. So before I jump into insights, because insights is often seen as a kind of corporate jargon, I want to talk about how insights plays into data and information. So data, of course, is that raw, unprocessed information that we capture according to some agreed-upon standard. That could be an audio transcript, a file, corporate revenue, a number. Data is generated in every business. Information, on the other hand, is data that's been processed, aggregated, and organized into a more human-friendly format. And as I go over these next few slides and talk about the difference between data-aware, data-driven, and insight-driven organizations, what you're going to see is often that link between how we aggregate and understand what our data is telling us and whether we're just putting dashboards in front of people's eyes, which is not very effective. Insight is that final tier where you're gaining insight by analyzing data and information in order to understand the context of a particular problem and draw conclusions. Those conclusions lead to actions that you can apply to your business. And I also want to demystify insight a little bit, because that's something that can be really confusing and also just hard to understand the sorts of insights that are valuable, impactful, and meaningful to your organization. So Global Web Index has done a lot of research on this, and I think they have a really concise takeaway here on when an insight is valuable to your organization. And that's when it's human, so it's simple and easy to relate to and identify with. It's something that grabs you. You see it and you care about that piece of information. It's universal. So does your insight speak to a wider audience rather than a regional or otherwise heavily segmented one? Now, obviously, if your organization is in goods or services or a nonprofit, then universality may be a moot point. You may have a specific issue that you want to work on. Also, it's true to brand. So if insight doesn't align to your organization's values, your culture, what your employees care about, then it's not valuable to your organization. And then finally, it's targeted. And this is something that I will add a caveat to as well. So is your insight geared towards the goal that you want? And in data, we talk a lot about bias and looking at the wrong data. So the important thing here is to understand that you can have goals for your organization. The data and insights that you garner may not always tell the story that you want them to tell, but you do need to listen to those insights as an indicator that you need to change and adapt. So jumping into it, here are the kind of high-level takeaways from this presentation. First, if your organization wants to be innovation-driven or insight-driven, you need to adhere to a few principles, build a few key competencies, and then deploy those insight capabilities in the decide, act, learn loop. Some of you may be familiar with the Observe OODA loop, which is also great, but I'll dive into this a little bit more. So, what are the core principles for establishing an insight-driven organization? First, and this is the only time I'm going to use a meme in this entire presentation, and regrettably, it does not come up without the animation. Any of you familiar with this meme? Yeah, I see a few. The students over there think it's funny. Okay, so investments in insight capabilities are strategic. So data-aware firms are those firms who build data warehouses and invest in self-service analytic tools in the hopes that good results will happen. So you often see this, and this will align to a few other slides here. Companies that finally have a Microsoft Power BI license, and they decide that they want to implement Power BI and put a dashboard in front of everyone. Data-driven firms, on the other hand, make it a business strategy, but they struggle to link that technology to business requirements. So it's often, hey, we have all this great data, we have these dashboards that tell us something, but what is the actionable goal that we're seeking to undertake here? Insight-driven firms, however, invest to achieve their business's strategic objectives. They focus on competitive advantage, and they're always looking at generating and applying insight in every business decision. And I'll talk about this a bit more when I get into actual strategy and things you can take back to your organization. Next, insights are pervasive and anticipatory and delivered at the edge. So data-aware firms are those who make data available for observation and exploration via those same analytical and reporting apps. But they fail to make insights pervasive and embed them throughout their advanced analytics platforms and AI, and this is something that's really important too. So as you think about your data stacks and the places that you're getting data, and let's say you are a consumer goods business, you're selling goods and services, and you may think, well, AI is not going to do anything for me. Well, all of the log data that your systems collect, whether that be the processes that your business analysts go through, the processes that customer service representatives take when they're interacting with customers and your chatbots, all of those things are going to be in order to build AI solutions and automation for your company, they need to be pulled in. You need to start thinking about that now. How can I pull this log data in order to derive insights from them? How can I improve our customer experience? And again, I'll touch on this customer experience bit a lot throughout this presentation because I really think that a number of firms get this wrong. They put customer experience over employee experience. And I can't stress enough that employee experience is going to drive your business to new heights. Customer experience is going to come from that. If your employees are not happy, if they don't feel like you're investing in them, if they don't feel like they have an organization where they're heard, where they're engaging with management and other teams, they're not going to do the work that you want them to do. Think about the worst customer experiences that you have. Maybe it's at Walmart or Amazon or God knows what. These are not companies that are known for investing and valuing employees. When you look at companies like REI or, again, Patagonia, and I hate to go down the environmental bin. I am in Western Maryland, though, so I know you all wear this stuff. But those are companies that do invest in their employees. They're companies that have a continuous learning mentality. They want their employees to feel like they're part of the whole and not just another cog in the machine. Next, insights are actionable. So data-aware firms really struggle to turn signals into actions. We had this in the Appropriations Committee. So when I came in there, they were looking at implementing Power BI to essentially look at all of the congressional funding requests that we get from thousands of constituents in every state. So this is, let's say you're operating a nonprofit or a local government and you're looking to request money from the Appropriations Committee. We would essentially aggregate all of this data that was coming in. We'd present this beautiful dashboard to our staff directors, and they would say, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't understand what this is telling me. It's great. I can see, number of requests per state. I can see it by the type of field that it's in. But how does this help us? And again, maybe the federal government's not the best body to point to for innovative and effective solutions, but it was a struggle for us to try to explain to them that this is going to impact other systems that you rely on. So if you know that you're getting a whole lot of requests around things like Health and Human Services or FEMA, an example, if we're talking about some of the recent disasters that we've seen in Florida and other places, then you need to update your systems and processes to take that data, to ingest that data better. So these are front-facing customer forms. These are forms that constituents complete. It also affects the way that subcommittees work with offices. So the point I'm trying to make here is that it's really, really important that you don't just put an analytics dashboard in front of somebody and say, here, go forth and do. You have to draw insights from it, and they have to be actionable. They have to be able to have takeaways for your customers, for your employees, and they have to drive through every element of your organization. Next, and I've already touched on this, but it's really, really important that you invest in your employees. And what I mean by this is ensuring that learning and experimenting in your organization is continuous. Data-aware firms are really good at, again, standing up these tools, but they often look at it from a siloed approach. How many of you have organizations that value agile methodologies? Anybody here in a software company? Agile, a little bit? Okay. Well, if you haven't heard of Agile, it's something we've been talking about for well over a decade now. It's something we've implemented in the Senate, and it's had incredible benefits. And what the kind of core of Agile is people over process. It's about ensuring that your people are feeling powered, have autonomy. In terms of data, it means that you're democratizing data. You're making data available to every single sector within your organization. We struggled with this in the Senate, and I'll get to this a little bit later, but when we rolled out some of these advanced analytics tools like Tableau, Adobe Analytics for some of our website data, constituents visiting the senators on the web, we noticed that these were siloed, highly controlled analytics tools. You'd have a press team, an example, that wanted to see the analytics data for the websites. You'd have maybe a special projects team that wanted to see how projects were being implemented that the Congress had funded. And we realized that once we started democratizing this data and putting it in front of people that you might not usually consider, whether based on their functional role or their experience in the office, that we had some really cool, innovative ideas. We were encouraging staff to use these tools themselves. We weren't gatekeeping anything, and we had some really, really cool insights that I'll talk about a little bit later. And a lot of this is, again, operating in that closed-loop mentality of when you get an insight that's not working for you, when you get data that's not working for you, ask how you can improve, and have a fail fast, fail often mentality. You do not want your employees to come to you with ideas to the point of an earlier presentation that are energetic and passionate about their field and what they're doing, to then feel like you're essentially holding them back from sharing their perspectives. And then finally, it is a team sport. And I know I've touched on this a lot, but data-aware firms are those who deploy centralized reporting analytics sponsor driven by primarily an IT organization, whereas insights-driven firms are those that have agile cross-functional teams along with chief data officers, chief analytic officers, but they're sharing that data out through stand-ups, through regular all-hands meetings with their staff. And again, you have to make it a team sport. I know I've stressed that quite enough. What are some of the competencies that your organization can build in order to really embrace this insights-driven data analytics forward approach? Well, first, you have to have the right strategy, practices, internal partners, data, and platforms. And I'm going to break these down over the next few slides. So, despite how painfully obvious this may seem, it's something that many organizations struggle with in its strategy. Top-down investment means that your C-suite is mandating that insights are applied at every decision. If you have a strategic plan, it had better include data analytics and insights as a path to achieving those goals. Your investments have to align with that goal, and it could start with hiring a single chief data officer, like I said, to oversee strategy, or it could be paying for employee certifications and continuing education in data analytics, but it has to start somewhere. And I'll come back to this later, this concept of data advocates. I can't stress enough that if you're looking for innovative solutions to your company's data problems, you have to encourage data advocates at all levels, not just the C-suite. You have to have people that are frontline business analysts that are saying, hey, listen, I think there's some really good data that I'm getting from maybe lead calls that I'm doing or other things that we're just not utilizing. And listen to that and make sure that your IT organization that's supporting those analytic platforms are scaling that appropriately. Next, you have to have a very clear commitment to this from the C-suite. Transitioning to insight-driven success, or more broadly, scaling your analytics, is an ongoing process, and there are going to be challenges. There are going to be times where you have an insight that you think is really powerful and is going to make a difference, and it is not going to do what you expect it to do. But you have to ensure your C-suite is still behind the principle of putting data first. I personally recommend that communication from the C-suite, when you're talking about making sure that you have that clear vision, is in the form of, again, those all-hands meetings, those daily stand-ups, ensuring that your organizational teams are meeting together in a cross-disciplinary function. I also recommend heavily that you build centers of excellence. And the tough thing about centers of excellence is that you'll often have an organizational approach that is, I'm going to hire a chief data officer, I'm going to have a few project managers or something within my organization, I'm going to throw them all in a monthly meeting and hope something comes out of it. Centers of excellence should be organic. They should come naturally. So this should be a matter of really letting your teams, telling them, yes, you can work with those teams cross-functionally. Don't worry about looping in a manager on an email communication or something like that. I want you guys just to work together and see what you can do. And then finally, if teams or individuals tell you that they lack the data to make a decision or the insight to make a decision, determine how you can get it and do that. So an example, this is something where companies really, really struggle with, and a lot of it can just be processed. So in the Senate, we've had issues where, we don't want to make a customer form too onerous. We don't want to ask for too much information from an office. And we often turn around and say, well, if you're not going to get that data there, where are you going to get it? Are you going to use anecdotal evidence to try to justify this? And that's a tough shift for some organizations, because it really does mean you kind of have to let go. Next is your practices. So you want to continue to optimize your insight-driven practices to maximize business outcomes. So make it clear to your organization that insight-driven processes are linked directly to business outcomes. Again, this can be through the form of regular reports, maybe from that data analytics governance team that you stand up or whatever it may be. It's also developing enterprise-wide cross-functional standards and investing in your people. So one of the most challenging things when people are trying to democratize data is, I've given data to all of these different teams, but things aren't happening. And a lot of that is from a governance perspective. So you really need to implement tools that, again, empower your employees to use that data in a meaningful way to them. And don't dictate from the top down. These have to flow up from the bottom. Next, develop and adhere to data, business intelligence, and analytics governance policies that further evidence your commitment to insight-driven business. And then finally, break down those silos by deploying Agile DevOps. And I didn't see many hands when we talked about Agile, but this is going to help every aspect of your application lifecycle and ensure that Agile development, that build, test, release, monitor, plan model, drives the relationship between your organization and customers. If you are not getting feedback, if you build an app and throw it out there and think, oh, wow, I guess customers are using it and enjoying it, and you're not getting any feedback, you need to ask your teams, why are we not hearing about this? I know customers do not like surveys, but you cannot just throw things out in a waterfall style and expect them to work for you. And then finally, I really can't reiterate enough that culture really does drive everything. The incredible insights that you're going to get are going to help drive employee experience, which is then going to drive customer experience. And I'd encourage you to do some reading on that topic of the link between EX and CX. Next, it is about internal partners. So again, I've reiterated this enough. I'm not going to talk about it too much here on this slide, but establishing those centers of excellence, improving data literacy across your organization are the key tools that you need here. And I'll talk about this when it comes to data skills pyramid that Forrester's developed that I think is really great. But again, part of this is, of course, investing in people through real certification. So I usually am not the type of person that wants to stand up here and tell you, have your employees take this test or get this certification. I have a PMI ACP. I think it means nothing. If my organization paid a lot for it, it is what it is. But I do think that tools like Google Data Analytics, AWS Data Analytics, Coursera has a great IBM Data Analyst certification course that's on there, and then Microsoft BI has a Data Analyst associate certification. And SAS also has a similar one. I forget what the name of it is. But the point is all of these cost less than $1,000 an employer. So if you want to implement a data strategy and you don't want to start with hiring some $100K a year full-time employee that's going to oversee all of your data and analytics operations, then at minimum, do a pilot program. Offer your employees training on these platforms. Implement Power BI. See what they can do. And as they do that, they're going to come to you and say, hey, listen, I've got this great dashboard. I'm starting to, I think, get some really great insights here, but I don't have the data that we need in this sector. Then you can work with that other team cross-functionally to ensure that you get that data. I also can't recommend enough that this is all about optimization. It comes from the top down. I know I've said it previously, but it's really important that your C-suite understands that using insights is the only way that they're going to have a more just effective and efficient organization. The final thing I'll say, and this is about dollar and cents, this is to the point of establishing centers of excellence and encouraging mentorship programs. This is really important too. So a lot of organizations really, I think, undervalue the importance of mentorship programs more broadly across every segment of your organization. But in terms of data analytics, I can't stress enough that if you do not have somebody who does understand the analytics tools and platforms that you're using, and you're not having them talk to end users and customers about how they're using these dashboards, you're not doing anything. It's great to stand up these tools and have a person that's overseeing it, but it just feels so disconnected and disjointed in the end that it's not really bringing any measurable impact to your organization. And then another thing that I touched on a few times is democratizing data. So embed data within applications. Part of that is ensure that every enterprise application that you're standing, that you are bringing those log files to a central data repository. You're incorporating into a broader data fabric. Allow those different groups to work independently and access to manage and combine those tools. Embed compliance and security protocols. I know that's a huge thing, but it's so important that that every single team understands the importance of also protecting that client data. And I know that the last speaker from MindGrub and a few others have talked about this too. But security and governance is so important as you implement the strategy. And then finally, invest in maturing and improving your enterprise business metrics and metadata repositories. This can be done through, it has to be done through a multi-layered data architecture and making sure you're, again, continually improving that data quality and acquisition. Now, when it comes to platforms, this is something that a lot of people that aren't technical, that aren't in the data science field, get really bogged down by. But I want to break it down to a few things. So first, do an inventory of your systems. This would be systems of insight, which are the data analytics and learning platforms that you use within your organization. The systems of engagement, which are the business applications and customer engagement points, and the systems of record, which are the authoritative data sources for a given data element. Collect them to an integrated architecture and ensure that they flow between applications to drive decisions, experiences, and actions. As we move towards machine learning and heavy automation, this is going to be mandatory. And I talked about this earlier. If you aren't already collecting the log data from these systems, to leverage it, to help automate and improve, you need to start doing it now. And the great thing is that there are very simple tools out there. I mean, are any of you implementing ServiceNow, Oracle Redwood, or any of these other lower no-code platforms in your organization? Okay, that's not good. You should definitely be looking at low and no code. But ServiceNow and these other tools, Appian is another example. I just saw them at a tech conference. They will do this for you. You can literally bring in these low code and no code development experts. They will pull in your system logs if you have them and start building automated processes for you. So again, can't stress enough that if you want to get into AI and automation, this is the simplest path of entry, but you have to have that underlying data shored up first. Next, you want to feed those lessons from the decisions and actions that you're making back into those systems of insight. So again, and I kind of touched on this earlier, if you have an insight, if you've made a decision based on an insight, collect data on that insight and then feed it back into the system to check your work. Data scientists are completely comfortable with having a idea or a theory that doesn't pan out the way that they should. But the great thing is that there are always lessons to learn there. And I just want to iterate there that fail fast, fail often mentality. Your organization has to take risks, especially in the field of data, to move forward. I also mentioned in passing the importance of data fabric, and that's something that you're going to hear increasingly. Data fabric enables enterprises to process, transform, secure, and orchestrate data from disparate data sources. So it really is this holistic view of how data is used in your organization. It's about automating the ingestion, curation, orchestration of that data. You're going to want to be looking into these services. So if you do have a chief data officer, a chief data analytics officer, ask them what your data fabric looks like. Ask them how these systems interconnect with one another and how your business is leveraging that to help make decisions that matter. Next, I want to talk about the decide, act, learn, improve loop. And I kind of talked a second ago about, some of you might be observed with this, or might be familiar with this observe, orient, decide, act loop, which I'm also a proponent of. But Forrester's done some really great work here on kind of breaking this out into more granular steps. So first, you want to set goals, objectives, and targets. So what that means is that data signals are not insightful, nor are insights actionable without some reference points. So some of you might be using an example, Google's Objectives and Key Results tool, or some other enterprise performance management methodology. But your insights-driven business journey must start with defining operational, tactical, and strategic goals and objectives. And you've got to keep that right. So to that point, from a boots-on-the-ground perspective, what does that mean? It means that try to set no more than about 5 to 10 goals per functional area within your organization, or you're going to risk losing focus. And that's something I really see as people roll out their strategic plans, whether they include data or not, or within subgroups within your organization, is that the mandate is just too broad. And again, we deal with this in Congress all the time. It is so important that you have your teams focused on specific goals. And again, those can link back to broader organizational goals that might have a lot more stuff in them, but it's important that your teams know what to focus on and what matters. Next is building metrics and performance indicators. So designing metrics to lead, to both identify leading and lagging indicators such as customer profitability, customer lifetime value, et cetera, are going to help you track down where you are at any given point in time against your goals and targets. Using Data Fabric as the mechanism to populate and refresh these metrics and indicators is key. And if you need more data for metrics than readily available in your existing SOR, SOE, or external applications, then leveraging emerging low-code development is going to be the way that you're going to do that to get those missing data points. So what I mean there, just to really break it down and simplify, because I know we have all level of data expertise in this room, is that if you don't have a data point, it can also mean that you don't have a system to collect that data point. So I encourage you to get one. I mean, from a website perspective, and this is really nuts and bolts, super basic, but implement tools like WebTrends or Adobe Analytics if you haven't already. The number of websites that I see, especially, I just moved back to the area, I've been looking at, restaurant menus and stuff like that. I often am thinking, wow, if they just had one tool to understand where customers are clicking onto, how they're getting to their website, what they're looking for while they're on the web, they'd be so much better. And it's not hard to implement these tools, and you've got to start somewhere. So I do want to make sure I'm coming back to, again, economies of scale here. How can we get your organization into data and analytics, even if you're a local restaurant? Next, you want to observe, explore, and discover insights. So instrument and deploy process and applications to empower all enterprise knowledge workers to observe through reporting and descriptive analytics and explore data and then discover insights. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, so I won't go into too much there. And then experiment, refine, validate, and optimize. So that means trust but verify. Trust your data or the information that you're getting from data, but verify with the results from analytics. So question every signal and every insight, and do these, ask whether they make business sense, whether they're being derived from high-quality data sets or whether there's underlying work that needs to be done on those data sets. Also consider bias, of course. This is something that a lot of organizations struggle with, and I touched on it earlier when we were talking about strategy more broadly, but I can't stress enough that if you don't have an objective view of your data analytics strategy and the insights that you're getting from it, you can't do anything with it. You're going to skew those results. I see this often in organizations that start implementing these dashboards and are focused on small things like amount of time it's taking to clear a backlog, an example of risk assessments or a project backlog. You need to take a step beyond that and really look at those aspirational outcomes. And that's the simplest way to put it. Where do you want to be? What's that desired state? And how can you get there? Next, you want to scale, embed, and deliver insights at the edge. So that means, and that sounds like, again, complete industry jargon, but it really does mean embedding analytical functionality into all business applications, whether transactional, operational, or productivity. And you're empowering knowledge workers with those actionable insights right at their fingertips. And I've talked about this a little bit more, but it's got to be frictionless. So again, it goes beyond gatekeeping too. It means that you have that basic level of data literacy so that people looking at these dashboards don't ask the questions that my bosses were asking initially, which is, what does this mean? What can I do with it? Next, make or automate decisions and act. I really just want to focus here on, again, the push towards automation that you all are going to see. If you're not already automating business processes, you need to start doing it now. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. Moreover, though, you're going to spend more money on actual people to do work than you are on the systems that can help support that work. And again, this isn't about replacing work. This is about leveraging knowledge work. You don't want your teams doing, manual processes that could be automated when they could be instead focusing on building customer engagement or helping to look through these analytics tools that you have to really make a difference for your organization. Link actions to business outcomes, which is, again, just the top-down approach of if we're going to make any decision in this organization, it needs to be backed by insight. It cannot be backed by a gut feeling of executive, and I know that's a hard thing to tell your C-suite, but if they want to see actual results, they've got to use data, or that's not going to happen. And then finally, learn and improve continuously. And again, that means building on successes and learn from failures. Continuously improving successful SOI, those system of insights applications, and scaling them across the enterprise to deploy other business units and leverage them in similar use cases. Analyze that cost of the cost of data failures. So if you are seeing that you don't have data and you're going to your C-suite and saying, hey, listen, I need this data, I need this tool, tell them what they're losing out on. I mean, it really is that simple. What are the things that we could be achieving if we actually invested in this sector? And this is a really simple graphic to kind of tie this all together. So strategy, internal partners, practices, platforms, and data are the foundational thing here. What you want to do is implement all of those things I was talking about, from the setting goals to actually learning and improving continuously, into all of your corporate structure. You want to ensure that that your employees understand why insights-driven business, or more broadly, data analytics, is a strategic focus for your organization. And then something that's a lot more applicable to everyone here, I think, is the data analytics skill period. So this is something that Infosys worked on that I think is really, really great research, and it's actually part of 2 slides here that we'll talk about. But this defines the way that you can scale and essentially make data accessible. And we've touched on a lot of elements of this data pyramid, but I want to dive into one of the harder elements of this, which is actual staffing. So if your organization is just building out your data strategy, you do need some data expertise, as I mentioned earlier. We have a skill shortage as it comes to data scientists and specialists, but your organization must have at least a single data scientist who understands the business and how data may be used to improve performance or finances in your organization. So again, as much as I would like to say that you don't need any data scientists at all, you do need somebody who understands kind of the field and how it works before you can actually have them go through your organization and train and give expertise guidance to data advocates within your organization. So a lot of this is about the pyramid is about the bottom-up approach. So part of this is bringing along those business and functional experts to encourage to put data into your systems, encourage them to start playing with data and building standardized templates to begin generating insights. Those would include tools like Oracle Analytics, SAS Analytics, and even Power BI and Tableau. Those are really accessible platforms. Beyond that, you want to socialize data intelligence up and down the business hierarchy, which is going to help you enmesh your organization in a data-driven culture with benefits including increased data discovery, improved data security and compliance, and increased collaboration. This is another way of looking at that period that really breaks out the functional roles within your organization. So what you should do is go back to your organization and identify those data specialists, the ones who actually have backgrounds in the field and expertise. But then also identify your citizen data scientists and advocates. And you're going to see this increasingly, like at the beginning when I was talking about low and no code development. I can't stress enough that if you aren't teaching your employees how to do low and no code development, whether it be through ServiceNow or other platforms, you are going to be just at such a competitive disadvantage. A lot of organizations want to contract out to a third party to do things like automate business processes, automate forms, website design, all of these things. I mean, if Squarespace and these other firms have shown you nothing else, it's that anybody can build a website. Similarly, anybody can build applications. Now, I'm not talking about advanced, Web 3.0 applications, but basic things that you need to start collecting data and automating your processes, you can do. And you need those citizen data scientists and citizen coders, so to speak, to do that. So these people don't have to necessarily be experts. Again, I wouldn't recommend implementing some standard to hold these data advocates to, but I would at least offer them the training and certifications that they need. And you have people that don't want to get involved in kind of citizen data science, at least help them to understand the value of it to your broader organization. The business functional experts, like I said, are those on the front lines who are going to be providing the insight. And then those executive sponsors are those C-suite or other people that are going to sponsor these projects and talk about quick wins. And probably the most actionable thing you can do is start thinking about quick wins. You can't inspire confidence in a data strategy without those quick wins. The projects that are quick wins are going to remove a lot of the lethargy that inexperienced firms suffer on their journey to insight-driven success. Firms stand to gain a lot from having a unified view of data, and often comes by approaching a difficult, though explainable challenge head-on. And what that means is literally, if you have a problem that your firm is encountering, whether it be going into a new market segment, showing return to stakeholders. Choose that hard problem that you think you can hopefully overcome with the data strategy and start to overcome it. They also inspire an agile way of working and promote collaboration up and down the skills pyramid. The great thing about quick wins is they are cross-functional. The insights that your data team or your data specialist might generate are going to have direct impacts on what your business analysts and front-end customer service people are going to be doing. And show them that. Tell them, hey, listen, we're improving this experience. We're improving if you're running a customer service tool of some sort, chatbot, et cetera, we're going to improve these chatbots to make sure that customers get what they want when they need it. An example of another quick win in the financial services or retail sectors is who's sitting on a ton of historical data that they often don't even think about how to leverage, is using techniques like natural language processing, text analysis, and data mining to uncover a more complete view of what's going on behind the scenes. This is really great in terms of customer segmentation, so you can identify who bought what, when, where, how delivering immediate ROI so that the business can take further actions. You're going to be able to do that if you implement some of these quick wins. In government and nonprofits, we're really dealing with policy and programs directly and how those impact people's lives. So this is, again, if you're running a nonprofit or a government organization, you want to talk about the effectiveness of rolling out dashboards for local businesses or other tools, start collecting data on that. How many users do you have? And I know that's a very basic approach, but from there, you'll be able to drive other insights. You'll be able to show your C-suite that you are making informed decisions that are the right decisions for the organization. You can also challenge your staff to create hypothesis on all kinds of things that are going in their business domain. So really do come to them and say, what's one of the problems that you think you're having, and why do you think you're having it? And then go a step further and say, what data would you need to help identify whether that is the cause, whether there is a causal relationship there? And again, analytics tools do some of that bivariate or multivariate regression analysis that you need to do to make those conclusions. You can also help to, and this is just really important at a big picture, define your current state and your desired state. So we talked about this in terms of the transition from data-aware to insights-driven businesses, but really do have a very realistic view of where you are currently within your organization and where you want to be. Without that, you can't really build a roadmap. And don't let C-suite executives or managers be delusional about where you are. If you're facing challenges, if there are things you need to overcome, be honest about them. And then also augment and free up human intelligence. So just as one of the last presenters was talking about cobotics, I very much look at AI and automation within any industry as a tool to augment human intelligence. So again, think about ways you can automate manual tasks. Think about ways that you can use these insights to help your knowledge workers do better work in their specific sectors. A few final words. I touched on a lot of things here. I'm sorry. One of the big takeaways here I want you to have is what's holding your organization back is likely culture. Part of that is failing to connect the what and the why. So time and money spent on data and analytics enablement, from data democratization to embedded analytics, is wasted when work is not connected to business decisions. To preempt this shortfall, define the problem or opportunity to solve collaboratively with data, analytics, and business teams. Incorporate all of them. As James Taylor, founder and CEO of Decision Management Solutions, noted, you can't improve decision-making with data if you don't know what decision you're trying to improve. I think that's a really great quote to take along with you. Next, misaligning what metrics matter. So data analytics and business professionals fail to align what insights should inform business decisions. Chris Power, SVP and Global Product Manager of Business Data Analytics and Digital Innovations at Citigroup, described the need for multidisciplinary collaboration. Nobody wants to take the necessary steps in between self-service analytics and teaching managers to do their own fishing. A lack of alignment can result in everyone's job being no one's job. Analytics is really core here. I mean, I can't stress enough that if you don't have your teams take ownership of this task, if you're implementing a data strategy, you're not going to make any progress on it. Next, relying on gut feel, and I discussed this a little bit earlier, but gut feel decisions can be wrong, they slow down progress, and they often lead to failure. Consider how Mike Edwards, the president of Borders in 2011, blamed headwinds for the demise of the firm because he failed to adapt, as competitors were doing, to the new digital paradigm of bookselling. And when the creator of Apple Stores, Ron Johnson, took over as CEO at JCPenney, he did not review data and launched an everyday low price strategy, which tanked because it misfired against what customers valued, which was the serendipitous discovery of a deal. These are just really, I think, concise takeaways here. all of us have anecdotal evidence and probably have some really great ideas that we want to work on, but view those as hypotheses and then see how data and analytics can help you prove or disprove that hypothesis. Next, how do you create the right culture? So build it through data literacy. We talked about this. This is really about role-relevant data literacy education from the front line to the executive suite. So really, I know I talked a lot about de-siloing, so to speak, but really think, what's the most important data tools that my frontline workers can have? What's the most important data tools or insights or knowledge that my executives can have? And again, some of that is going to be the quick win stuff for executives, but don't underestimate the importance of differentiating your approach between these different rungs in your organization. Also, spark a cycle of collaboration. So social learning is one of the most effective tools. We talked for a second at the beginning about the importance of adapting Agile framework, and part of that is daily stand-ups. Do any of you do daily stand-ups at your organizations? Do you have team meetings where you talk about, okay, great. Then I'm preaching to the choir here for some of you. But it is so important that people hear what's going on in the organization organically. Moreover, it's important that they hear the wins that are occurring within your organization. I can't stress enough the number of times. In fact, just the other day, we implemented Asana as a work management solution in the Senate. And we had Power BI, we had Teams, we were trying to do some stuff there on automation. And people just suddenly have loved adopting Asana. And why was that? Because we really focused on demos and getting out to everyone within our organization. We took an all-hands meeting that we had and gave a technical team that was responsible for the rollout of that solution about 15 minutes to talk about the benefits of it, some of the tools that you can use, and we saw a huge increase in usage and adoption of that tool. So social learning works just as well, too, for data analytics tools. If you can show them how Tableau or Power BI or some of these other tools are helping you to visualize the data that you already have, you can bring them along the way. Also, cultivating critical skills, the snail it portion, is also really important. The skills that grow in IDB culture include active listening, pliancy, empathy, stress tolerance, and communication. So these are soft skills. I mean, it is so important that your organization is able to work together collaboratively, and that's really the marker of an agile organization. And it comes back to this point, especially with empathy and stress tolerance. When you are implementing a new tool or a new strategy, it has a potential to fail. And your organization needs to understand that, and it shouldn't be punishing people that do want to experiment and try to push forward success. I mean, these are real innovators within your organization, so it's really important. Communication using data storytelling is also a great way to enable purposeful creation and delivery of presentation and data visualizations that tie into an audience's specific decision-making. So just as a presenter here today might use a graph talking about ROIs and all these things to stress the importance of implementing data, so too can you talk about, tell stories rather, with data visualizations. Especially if you're a nonprofit. I mean, governments and those who give out grants want to see hard facts on what you're doing with the money that they're giving you. And then finally, establish a closed-loop process. So Forrester's Decide, Act, Learn, Improve loop that I talked about is a great process for that insights-driven decision-making across silos, but it also connects desired outcomes to data requirements, metrics, and analysis. So that insight, really making sure that you're again testing every decision that you make is just so critical. What are some other takeaways? Democratize, decentralize, and scale. So this is going to be the high-level stuff if you want to take a picture of this or download the slide deck afterwards. These are things you can take back to your organization. So some of the things we touched on today are hire and develop citizen data scientists and data advocates within your organization, invest in platforms and people, then empower your people to leverage those platforms, and pay for certification or at least encourage it in both data and agile practices. Consider hiring a dedicated chief data officer or chief analytics officer or a team of data scientists that can help build the big picture, work with individual teams, and consult on challenges your teams may face as they mature. This is the really important thing that they're missing often, is having somebody the teams can go back to and say, hey, listen, I was working on this problem. I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to take from this. I feel like I'm missing data. And sometimes they just can't tell without an expert. Get ahead of the rise of low and no code development while you can. I, again, cannot stress that enough. If you've been to any tech conferences on the national level lately in the past 3 years, low no-code development is the future as much as data analytics is. Put data tools in everyone's hands and use analytics to improve employee experience as much as customer experience, and we touched on that a lot. Implement agile practices into your data strategy. That includes flattening and de-siloing your organization through cross-functional teams, encouraging that fail fast, fail often mentality, and implementing stand-ups within and across teams. Finally, identify where your organization is on your data journey and how to get to an insights-driven business. So use those slides that we talked about earlier, where I kind of broke down in each scale, whether it be platforms, people, or data, where your organization is and where it needs to go. Be very honest with your C-suite, too, about where you are in that journey. Encourage every team to identify and implement insights into their day-to-day work and establish those centers of excellence. And finally, and probably most importantly, as we've touched on, is gain and maintain C-suite support for data early and often. So at the beginning, identify and seize those quick wins, leverage those quick wins into organizational initiatives and plans, include them in your strategic plan to ensure that insight-driven success or data forward is a core tenet of your organization. Develop and adhere to data, BI, and analytics governance policies that further evidence your commitment to insight-driven success. And then finally, identify and remove barriers. Teams lacking the tools that they need, legacy organizational and IT structures holding you back, inflexible people and processes unwilling to adapt, and poor communication between functional groups. I know that was a lot of information that I presented with you today. It probably felt much more like a lecture than it did something engaging, but I'd love to take a few questions from you all.